To share her piece, Mother Goose, please welcome Beth Stark to the podium.
Good evening, my name is Beth Stark, and I'm honored to be here this evening sharing my experience with mental illness and addiction. I was diagnosed as bipolar type 2 just about 3 years ago at a top hospital in Boston. While I was a patient at this hospital, I was lucky enough to find a doctor that had finally found the key to unlock the mystery of my brain. I had an answer to the questions I'd been asking myself my whole life. The racing thoughts, the pressured energy, the negative voice in my head telling me I was worthless, the bouts of depression. Finally, I had an answer. Unfortunately, this is neither where my story started or ended. I had been brought to that hospital several days prior with hypothermia and was basically unconscious after dipping my toes in the waters of a suicide attempt, literally and figuratively. It is more than worth mentioning that besides being bipolar, I'm also an alcoholic. I struggle with alcoholism. All I could remember about that cold April day was driving to the river, drinking a pint of vodka, leaving my car running, placing my wallet on a bench, taking my shoes off, and getting in the water. After wading through the river fully clothed, nearly fully submerged, a kayaker found me and asked if I needed help. Completely disoriented and likely quite delusional, I said, "No, my dad's coming to get me." Luckily for me, that stranger could sense that something was amiss. She brought me to shore, called 911, and saved my life. Before I got into the river, my life had been on a rapid downward spiral for months. I'd been served divorce papers and had my custody compromised, and I was in the midst of erratic drinking that got god-awful after my son was born. But truthfully, my drinking and my mental health had always been awful. I was never a good drinker. I had always drunk alcoholically, but I never wanted to identify with it. After my son was born, it was like the train left the station never to return. It felt as though I had no control over my actions and who I was becoming. In addition to the alcoholism, I was always battling this other thing, but I never knew what it was. I would be diagnosed as suffering from depression, anxiety disorder. I would be given all these medications and nothing ever worked. The thing was always still there. After my proper diagnosis in Boston, I actually got out of the hospital and used my new crutch to continue my drinking. I would tell people, "Don't worry, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm just bipolar." Like that was something I could stick a Band-Aid on and make it all go away. Well, it didn't. It has taken me about this long to identify a lot of the feelings and emotions that have come with this experience. I've battled for my child back. I've identified as an alcoholic. I'm 2 years sober, and I put one foot in front of the other every single day. A couple of interesting things have happened to me along my journey, but one simple event made such an impression on me, I wanted to share it with you. After my maternity leave, I went back to work at a daycare in Waltham, Massachusetts. Right outside our windows is a pond, and in the spring, we watch families of geese give birth to goslings. They create these little families, and we see them go about and grow up together. The children absolutely love it. When I went back to work, I was in the midst of my custody issues. I had lost everything to this: my son, my marriage, my home. But I was crippled by embarrassment and shame that during this time with my son was supervised and I could not drive a car with him. The time apart is something I still struggle with today. I understood all the decisions that were made during this time, even if I hated all of them, and all I did was cry everywhere I could, and I respect all the people that had to make them. It could not have been easy. It was for the safety of my son, but it was gut-wrenching to say the least. One day I was leaving work, and I saw one goose all by herself, limping and struggling to walk. And I say it's a she because I knew it was the mom. And the mom was alone, and she didn't know where her family was. The area's not that big, the gaggle of geese always find one another. But I saw her, knew it was the mom, and pulled over and started crying tears I'd been holding in for so long. It was the most cathartic experience to identify with this goose. These are the feelings that I'd stuffed down and hidden. I never wanted to tell anyone the shame, the guilt, the fear, and the awfulness that comes from having your child taken away from you. I called the building maintenance men daily, driving them crazy, saying, "You have to go help the mom goose. She's lost and scared and can't find her family, and she wants to go home." I kept thinking moms shouldn't be apart from their families. They shouldn't miss their babies, but it happens and they do miss their babies. And it's hard and it's really difficult. I find there to be a particular type of shame for moms with mental illness and recovery issues. From the time we were young women, we were told we can do this amazing thing with our bodies and become mothers. We'll meet someone, start a family, and maybe spend weeks on vacation in the Cape. It was not like that for me. I gave birth and started to slowly lose my mind. This goose impacted my life so strongly, I went to AA meetings and talked about her. I went home and shared my concerns. Everybody would ask me about the goose, and I would tell them when she was still lost, and I rejoiced and took it as a sign when she was reunited with her family, just like me one day. Shortly after meeting the goose, I remember reading an article about a mom that lit herself on fire in a playground after the state had taken her child away from her. She had a particular type of bipolar that kept getting misdiagnosed. I understood why that woman did that. I could relate to those feelings. I don't ever want to say that I thought about lighting myself on fire, but I thought numerous times that I wasn't strong enough and I couldn't fight back. I might as well give up. I have heard judgments made about my behaviors or actions I have taken. I understand it. I can see how someone might not know what it's like in my shoes. What I've taken from this experience is I want to show people what it is like in my shoes. I want to share that being mentally ill or struggling with alcoholism is just a fact that my brain works differently than some. I have taken this and decided to make it my life's passion, to share my story so maybe someone won't feel so alone. It's my job to share that hope in life can be so amazing and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It can be a fight to stand up to negative self-talk and hearing what people say about you. It can be so difficult every day to move past the shame and the embarrassment, but it is the most rewarding experience to fight back against those feelings. 6 months after my marriage ended, I went to rehab. I came out. I made it 6 months and relapsed. The fight to prove myself stable and capable was much more difficult round 2. It involved a lot more boxes to be checked and a lot more hurdles to jump. But I wanted nothing more in my life than to do this and to do it well. And I still want to do it today. Last May, I gained 50-50 legal custody of my child back, and this past January, I gained 50-50 physical custody of him as well. I have the most amazing, empathetic, compassionate, and forgiving child on this planet. He has seen things I wish to God I could take back. I can't. My psychiatrist tells me that he won't remember anything from birth to age 3, like a form of baby amnesia. What he does remember will be stories he hears, and he will probably hear stories. I've been called a litany of colorful names. I've endured some bullying and false accusations made against me. These are things that I wish had never happened. But the name that I was called that at the time brought me to my knees in tears was mentally ill mom. But I am a mentally ill mom, and I'm also an alcoholic. These things are facts, and they're okay. But there are more facts, though, about me that are equally important. I'm a good person and a fantastic mom, and I love my son more than anything on this planet. I now have the tools, the resources, the strength, and the courage to handle this one day at a time. My son's life will be a little bit different because I find both bipolar to be tricky sometimes. Things can seem really loud. I need to focus to really understand what people are saying, and I overanalyze many of the decisions I make. But I study it, I learn about it, and I talk about it. I go to therapy once a week. I see my psychiatrist bi-weekly, and I work with a sober coach. I always want to be ahead of this disease because on the one day I don't get ahead, there's no telling what could happen. Even after I made a serious attempt on my life, and I knew I was the luckiest person, that this wonderful woman found me on a cold April day when not many people would be out kayaking. My life is so different now. I never really held my head up that high, and I don't want to sound cocky, but I'm pretty confident in the decisions I make today. I am closer to finishing college than I ever have been in my life. I just won a huge scholarship for my academic achievement, and the grit and tenacity has taken me to get here. I'm a peer mentor at my college, and I talk a lot. I juggle 2 jobs, school and being a mom. Being a mom is the most important job in my life, and I can say with certainty that I am proud of who I am and how far I've come. This is by far the bravest thing I've ever done in my life, sharing my story so candidly. I do talk very openly on social media about my experience with recovery and mental illness. Seeing everyone in their glossy pictures with their families when I had lost mine didn't feel very good, because I didn't have that. I'm sure everything they post and share isn't the whole truth, nor does it paint a complete picture, but I want to share what life may be really like for someone from a different point of view. If I do one thing well in my life, besides be a good mom, I want to help others, even if it's only one other person feel less, not as alone as I did. I didn't really have anyone to identify when this was all going on with me. My female friends in the program hadn't had their children taken away from them. I didn't have friends that had lost custody of their children. It was so heartbreaking to go to people and say, I don't have custody of my son. When I talk about this today, I like to put my hand on my heart. I have a small tattoo of a heart that syncs up with my hand. I like to put it there when I share my fears, my insecurities, my hopes, and my dreams. I am the most grateful person today. Don't get me wrong, I have my moments. But in the big picture, I thank my lucky stars all the time. There is such a huge chance I could not be standing here today and sharing my story. I think about that daily. Not to live in guilt and shame, but to remind myself how different my son's life would be and how I would have altered the trajectory of so many people's lives, especially Philly's. Today, things are good. He is happy, his father's happy, and I am happy. And our lives are going in 2 different directions, but we co-parent well, and we always do what is best for our son. Every morning, I promise to my son that I will try and stay strong and be brave. I hope by standing here today, I'm showing you that bravery, and if anyone sitting here needs it, I hope I am offering that hope, because without hope and belief that change is possible, there is nothing. Thank you. I am Beth Stark, and this is my brave.